Alright, hello everyone, and thank you for tuning in once again to the Black Box Podcast. BBOR, Black Box Online Radio, coming to you from West Virginia. Today we're going to do something that we've never done before. We're going to have a little bit of a discussion about Chaim Yehuda Reich. But first, we're going to do a sort of thought experiment, if you will, which we haven't really done before on the channel. I should introduce this by saying that I was watching the show American Greed, like it was on CNBC, and they deals with white-collar criminals, mostly financially motivated crimes, and they have lots of uploads on YouTube now, so I was checking some of that stuff out, first time in a long time. And they were talking about a particular scam that involved a farm in the Midwest that was run by a Hasidic Jewish owner. And I thought that they were going to be talking about Chaim Yehuda Reich, but they mentioned somebody different. His name was Shalom Rabashkin. It was a different case, but I was reminded of the FBI's top 10 most wanted list for top 10 white-collar financial crimes. I mean, there are many different FBI top 10 most wanted lists, the cyber crimes and the terrorists, and just the overall top 10 most wanted. But that was where I first found Chaim Yehuda Reich. First, let's do the thought experiment. The way I would kind of introduce this to people is I would say that, what would you say about someone who takes out a loan for $500,000? His partner gets $250,000, he gets $250,000. They say that they are going to buy a farm with it. Somehow they got the money in cash, but then the person takes $250,000, flees the country, and goes to Israel, and he can't be extradited. He's got his family, 4 children with him. Is that a victimless crime? It seems pretty effortless when you say it like that. And I got some interesting responses that I've asked people about over the years. I've been talking about this case since 2014. Even though for a while I forgot the name Chaim Yehuda Reich, but when I would ask people about the case, just talking about it, I mean, I got some interesting responses saying, no, that money had to be FDIC insured. It means the taxpayers are going to pick up the bill for the $250,000. And then, of course, some people are just like, there's no such thing as a victimless crime. It is just purely ill-motivated. That's just an immoral action for selfishness. But really, I mean, no matter which way you want to look at it, what would you say about that? Where is the real victim in the case, in that thought experiment? That's sort of the way that I had remembered the case of Chaim Yehuda Reich. But in reality, though, we got on another CNBC page that's connected to the show American Greed, not from that Shalom Rabashkin stuff, but the way they introduce it is, the FBI's record of Chaim Yehuda Reich's criminal history dates back to 1990, when he and an associate allegedly took out $500,000 in a loan from an Omaha bank to invest in turkey farming. The loan went into default, but when the bank tried to recollect the money, representatives discovered that the men had falsified their identities on the loan application and provided financial information that was either inaccurate or outright false. Though the associate was apprehended, Reich remains at large, wanted for allegedly making false statements on loan applications to a federal credit bank. He was last seen in Union City, New Jersey in 1994. He has connections to Israel, Italy, and Argentina. The FBI says that he might be living in Israel with his wife and children. I mean, the thought experiment that we sort of created was the way that I would talk about this case in the past, but getting a little bit of clarity on the issue, you really see that, it's like he took a substantial amount of the money with him, and he fled the country. They believe he went to Israel, and I had remembered something back when I found out about this case in 2014, that I thought there was something like Israel didn't have to extradite him because he was a Jewish settler or something like that. I don't know where I got that from, but it's just like, that was just something that I had been talking about as well. I mean, I really wish that there was more information about this case just posted online. I got that thing from CNBC. Other than the FBI Most Wanted poster, which isn't even really up now, there really aren't a lot of conversations about Chaim Yehuda Reich. It sounds very simple, but it's kind of just the way we introduced it in the beginning, just talking about the thought experiment thing. Like, is that the most malicious crime in the world? Is that an immoral action? It's kind of just sort of an ethics debate. I mean, I definitely say it's illegal. I definitely don't encourage anyone to steal between $250,000 and $500,000. But you're just kind of wondering, like, where really would be the victim? Would people lose their jobs and something like that? But what's kind of puzzling about it is just sort of like the manner in which it's gone about. What I understood was that if you're taking out a loan, they almost never give it to you in cash because they're trying to definitively avoid things like that. I'm not really sure how they were able to compile so much of the money. From what I've gathered, they did not purchase the farm. I mean, they took out blatantly misleading statements to acquire a large sum of money. And it seems most likely that the plan was to flee the country. Once again, I'd remember that thing about they had moving to Israel as a Jewish settler, something about the extradition law, but that might be something that I have just pulled from thin air. But yes, of course, Chaim Yehuda Reich is a practitioner of the Hasidic Jew sect of Judaism. He's a Hasidic Jew, so they believe he's probably just blending in with the community in Israel. And, you know, bringing a wife and 4 children into this, now that's something where you can really just sort of say, that's something that can definitely be kind of the majorly immoral action. Even just that's the type of example that you choose to set for your children. I mean, very, very bizarre. And, I mean, that would be a bizarre and destructive way to grow up. That would be kind of an immoral way to be raising your children. All right, we're kind of on the run now, so we're just going to have to flee the country, and don't look in this suitcase. Yeah, so it's really kind of something perplexing about these white-collar crimes, because people often think that they are somewhat, they think less harshly about them because they aren't necessarily dealing with murder, they aren't necessarily dealing with violence and aggression. But, you know, multiple people could be affected by these things in many different ways. That's why I wanted to kind of start out at the beginning talking about the thought experiment. Back when Chaim Yehuda Reich was featured on the FBI Most Wanted list for white-collar criminals, the reason why I clicked on his photo and read his page to begin with I was like, what? Because they posted such a low-resolution photo of him. It was in black and white, and everything just looked smudged together. I mean, like, literally, the ink and the imagery, you could barely see anything. I was like, who or what on earth, what's going on? So, like, I mean, it caught my attention, I'll give him that. But I clicked on the page, and then I began to read about just the descriptions about trying to purchase the turkey farm in Omaha. And I mean, it got my attention, but it was just a very difficult photo to look at. I don't know how anybody would ever be able to use a photo like that to, have you seen this person around or something? Have you seen them in Jerusalem or something like that? But they have now, on CNBC, I believe they have the same one, but in a much higher resolution that is in color, that is on this website here for 10 notorious white-collar criminals. But the thing is, though, it's like, I'm always quite curious how people would be able to get out of the country and such. I mean, people can use fake passports. I mean, not even really to, like, give away someone else's story, but I've even known somebody who's been moving around the world on a fake passport, not for any criminal reasons. I don't even really know why, but people can make fake passports, and they can fool the best of authorities. But Chaim Yehuda Reich did this back in 1990. That's when this thing first started out. So you got to imagine that, I mean, back in the early 90s, this technology stuff really wasn't that big. I mean, look at the stuff that we had in the years prior to that. Things like D.B. Cooper, getting on a plane with an alias. And, I mean, my father even told me back in the day, people would buy plane tickets while they're sitting on an airplane. You didn't really need to book in advance even. So it's like, I know 1990 wouldn't have been those exact things, and I know that 1990 was a little bit ahead of DB Cooper. But the point is, technology has changed so much in the last 29 years. Yes, it has. And it's like, it was probably much easier to avoid any sort of sensors or detection in 1990, and the exact date really that he was last seen was 1994. Even at that point, sure, we left the country and went to Canada in 2006, just using our university ID cards. They just needed a card with our picture on it. A university ID card. And it's like, we crossed the border into Canada, we crossed back into the United States. The international laws were a lot more lax than they are now. So that really allowed for movement to function much more freely and effortlessly. So it's very possible that somebody like Chaim Yehuda Reich could have fled to Israel. I mean, if you're a practitioner of the Hasidic Jew sect of Judaism, that definitely would be the place to go. Blend right into the Jewish communities. And if you have ties to Italy or Argentina or something, I mean, those would also be suitable things. But when the FBI says something like, they believe he may be living in Israel, that probably means he's living in Israel. They probably just can't do anything about it. I mean, when the FBI was talking about Semyon Mogilevich, someone who was on the top 10 most wanted list, as long as I can remember, they flat out said he lives freely and openly in Russia. Why? Because Russia has no extradition treaty with the United States of America. Another reason for that, I mean, like, that's why they couldn't extradite Edward Snowden. Granted, some people think Edward Snowden is a whistleblower and actually someone who did the right thing, but the fact of the matter is he couldn't be extradited because Russia has no extradition treaty with the United States. And I have no idea if Italy or Argentina would. The point is, like, all of these nations have their own extradition laws. But one thing that I would say is, if somebody is living in another country and they can like gain citizenship or something like that, maybe Chaim Yehuda Reich could do that in Israel, Jewish settler, as we said, or something like that. I'm told that no nation ever has to give up their own citizens. Like, if someone is a citizen of, like, a dual citizen of America and another nation, and they go to that other country, that country never has to extradite them. No nation has to extradite their own citizens to face, like, the legal penalties in a different country. I don't know what to say about that. I just thought, like, it was an interesting case the way we, like, played out in the thought experiment. Just like somebody takes out the loan and then they just flee the country. I mean, is it wrong? Yes. Is it illegal? Yes. But I would just talk about it as kind of like we said, a thought experiment. Where do you think, like, the penalties and the where do you think the destruction from the crime would be in a particular example like that? But in all reality, I mean, they caught his partner. It's a very illegal action, deception, fraud, and even bringing children into the mix. I mean, like we said, what kind of real example would that be to set for the family you're trying to raise? But, this was one case that when I tried to first get in touch with it again about a year and a half ago, I wanted to see if there had been any developments about Chaim Yehuda Reich. He was taken off the FBI's top 10 most wanted white-collar criminals. And like I said, I found it by searching just Jewish man, $500,000, turkey farm, Midwest, and that came up. That actually brought me to Chaim Yehuda Reich through Google, because it took me a while to remember his name, and it's one of the things where, I mean, I just wish that they could have a bit more information about it, and we could do a little bit more investigation, but I don't know how far that would get us with this particular case. I think that this would be one where the FBI could discuss it a little more, but I mean, we can always just look out for some recent developments. But with this particular one, I think it's much more about just looking at the kind of ethical boundaries and in what way were they crossed. I know he did something wrong, but in what way did that happen? It's kind of just examining life and such. I mean, okay, a guy took out a loan and he didn't want to pay it back. Boom. Okay, yeah, I know what he did, and I know that's illegal. But it just, sometimes you really want to ask the questions about humanity and where's it all going. Well, that's all for me now. I mean, I think we've asked the questions many times in this. If you have anything to say at all about Chaim Yehuda Reich and just about extradition law in general, here's another question. Do you believe that we need an extradition treaty with Russia? Maybe we should have more of these things around the world? Maybe less or something. What do you think? If you have anything to say at all, please drop a comment below. And until next time.